The Discovery captain Jake Morrison had seen his share of impossible things during 20 years of deep space exploration, but nothing prepared him for what appeared on the Starfire's main display that cold Tuesday morning. The twisted wreckage of an alien vessel drifted silently against the star field, its hull gleaming with an otherworldly metal that seemed to bend light around itself. "Distance, Lieutenant Brooks?" Morrison asked, his weathered face reflecting the blue glow of the tactical display. The scar running from his left ear to his chin, a memento from the Battle of Proxima Station, caught the light as he turned. "Approximately 800 meters, sir," replied Lieutenant Emma Brooks, her fingers dancing across the sensor array. "Hull composition is unlike anything in our databases. It's definitely not human technology." The bridge of the UES Starfire hummed with tension. First Officer David Kane stepped forward, his expression mixing excitement with caution. "Sir, I'm reading faint life signs. Someone's alive over there." Morrison touched his scar unconsciously, a habit he'd developed whenever faced with difficult decisions. The twisted flesh reminded him daily of the cost of rushing into unknown situations. But it also reminded him of something else, that sometimes the impossible was worth the risk. "Prep the shuttle bay," Morrison ordered. "Mr. Kane, assemble a boarding team. Standard first contact protocols, but keep it small. If this goes wrong, I want minimal casualties." Within an hour, Morrison found himself suited up and crossing the void between ships. The alien craft was smaller than it appeared on sensors, perhaps the size of a civilian transport. Its design flowed like liquid metal frozen in time, with no visible seams or mechanical joints. Everything about it suggested technology far beyond human capability. The airlock sequence proved surprisingly compatible with human systems, as if whoever built this ship had studied human engineering. Inside, the corridors were wide and tall, built for beings roughly human-sized but with different proportions. Soft blue light emanated from the walls themselves, casting everything in an ethereal glow. They found her in what appeared to be the command center, slumped over a console that pulsed with gentle rhythms, like a sleeping heartbeat. She was unmistakably humanoid, but clearly not human. Her skin held a faint silver luminescence, and her features were delicate, almost fragile in their perfection. Most striking were her eyes, large violet orbs that seemed to hold depths of ancient wisdom. When she stirred at their approach, Morrison felt his breath catch. Despite the obvious differences, there was something hauntingly familiar about her, as if she'd stepped from humanity's oldest dreams of what lay beyond the stars. "Help," she whispered in perfect English, though her lips barely moved. The words seemed to echo directly in their minds rather than their ears. "My ship, damaged. I cannot return home." Morrison stepped forward, his scarred face gentle with concern. "We're here to help. I'm Captain Morrison of the Earth vessel Starfire." Her violet eyes fixed on his face, lingering on the scar that marked him. Something flickered in her expression, recognition perhaps, or understanding. When she spoke again, her voice carried harmonics that made the air itself seem to sing. "Captain Morrison," she said, and somehow his name sounded like music. "I have been waiting for someone like you." The revelation. The alien woman, who introduced herself as Zara of the Ethereal Collective, proved to be unlike anything in humanity's first contact protocols. As the medical team worked to stabilize her aboard the Starfire, she demonstrated abilities that defied conventional understanding of biology and physics. Dr. Michelle Torres, the ship's chief medical officer, emerged from the medical bay with an expression of professional bewilderment. "Captain, her physiology is remarkable. She appears to be healing from whatever injuries she sustained, but not in any way our medical knowledge can explain. It's as if her cells are reorganizing themselves at the molecular level." Morrison nodded, his hand unconsciously moving to his scar. "What about her mental state? Is she coherent enough for questioning?" "More than coherent, sir. She's been asking. Specifically for you. Something about patterns and connections. I have to admit, Captain, she seems particularly interested in your... Torres gestured toward his scarred face. In the medical bay's soft lighting, Zara appeared even more otherworldly. Her silver-tinted skin seemed to glow with its own inner light, and those remarkable violet eyes tracked Morrison's movements with an intensity that was both unsettling and strangely comforting. "Captain Morrison," she said as he approached, her voice carrying those same musical harmonics. "May I ask how you received that mark upon your face?" The directness of the question caught him off guard. Most people avoided mentioning the scar, pretending not to see the twisted flesh that served as a permanent reminder of his past mistakes. "Battle wound," he said simply. "Plasma fire during a boarding action. I was younger and more reckless then." Zara's expression shifted, and something that might have been sadness flickered in her violet eyes. "Among my people, such marks are considered sacred. They represent survival, growth, the willingness to face danger for others. We call them star-touched, blessed by the universe itself." Morrison felt something shift in his chest, a loosening of tension he hadn't realized. He'd been carrying for years. "Your people sound wise." "In some ways, perhaps. But we lack something your species possesses in abundance." She sat up slowly, her movements fluid despite her apparent injuries. "We have forgotten how to take risks, how to reach beyond the safe boundaries of known space. We have become stagnant." "Is that why you're here? Exploring beyond your boundaries?" Zara's laugh was like silver bells in a gentle wind. "I was not exploring, Captain Morrison. I was fleeing. My ship was damaged in what you might call a disagreement with my own people. They believe I have become too interested in younger species, too willing to violate our ancient protocols of non-interference." First Officer Kane stepped forward from where he'd been monitoring the conversation. "Non-interference? You mean you've been watching other species develop?" "For millennia, yes. The ethereal collective maintains observers throughout this galaxy, studying the growth and development of younger civilizations. Most species follow predictable patterns, reaching certain technological benchmarks before either achieving transcendence or destroying themselves." Morrison felt a cold certainty settle in his stomach. "And humanity? What pattern are we following?" Zara's violet eyes met his, and in them he saw something that might have been hope mixed with fear. "That is what makes your species so fascinating, Captain. You follow no pattern we have ever observed. You should have destroyed yourselves centuries ago, yet you continue to not only survive but thrive. You take impossible risks and somehow make them work. You face insurmountable odds and find ways to overcome them." She reached toward his face, stopping just short of touching the scarred flesh. "This mark on your face tells the story of your entire species. You were injured doing something dangerous, something that others might have considered foolish, but you survived, learned, and became stronger. Most species would have avoided such risks after the first failure. And your people sent you to study us?" "My people sent me to observe and report. I chose to do more than that." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I chose to make contact, to learn not just what humanity does, but why you do it. That choice has made me an exile from my own kind." Implications hit Morrison like a physical blow. "You sacrificed everything to make contact with us?" "I sacrificed safety and certainty for the possibility of understanding something greater than myself." "Is that not what your species does every time you launch a ship into unknown space?" Morrison found himself smiling despite the gravity of the situation. "I suppose it is. The question now is, what do we do about it? Your people won't just let you stay with us, will they?" Zara's expression grew serious, and the soft light emanating from her skin dimmed slightly. "They will come for me, Captain Morrison. And when they do, they will have to make a choice that will determine the fate of both our species." The pursuit, 3 days after Zara's recovery, the Starfire's long-range sensors detected them. 5 ships of impossible design emerging from what appeared to be folded space itself. The ethereal collective had come calling, and they did not appear to be in a diplomatic mood. "Range 2 million kilometers and closing," reported Lieutenant Brooks, her voice tight with tension. "Captain, their energy signatures are off the charts. Each one of those ships appears to be generating more power than our entire fleet combined." Morrison stood at the center of the bridge, his scarred face grim as he studied the tactical display. Beside him, Zara watched the approaching vessels with an expression of resigned sadness. "Those are judgment ships," she said quietly. "They are not designed for warfare in the conventional sense. They are meant to correct mistakes. Mistakes like making unauthorized contact with primitive species." First Officer Kane asked, his hand moving instinctively toward the weapons console. "Mistakes like believing that growth requires risk, that understanding requires connection rather than distant observation." Zara's violet eyes reflected the red glow of the alert lights. "My people have forgotten that wisdom comes not from avoiding failure, but from learning to survive it." Communications Officer Lisa Park looked up from her station. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. The signal appears to be modulating directly into our translation systems." "On screen," Morrison ordered. The view screen filled with the image of a being that shared Zara's ethereal beauty, but none of her warmth. Where Zara's skin held a gentle silver luminescence, this figure's flesh seemed to contain starlight itself. Ancient eyes regarded the bridge crew with the cold judgment of geological ages. "I am High Arbiter Vex of the Ethereal Collective." The figure spoke, its voice carrying harmonics that made the bridge crew's teeth ache. "You harbor one who has violated our most sacred laws. Return her to us, and your species will be permitted to continue its existence unhindered." Morrison stepped forward, his scarred face set in determined lines. "High Arbiter, I am Captain Morrison of the United Earthship Starfire. Zara requested asylum with us, and we have granted it. She is under our protection." The alien's expression didn't change, but the temperature on the bridge seemed to drop several degrees. "You do not understand what you are protecting, human. She has contaminated herself with exposure to your chaotic influence. She cannot be permitted to return to our space." "Then let her stay with us," Morrison replied. "We'll take responsibility for her." "Impossible. She carries knowledge of our civilization that cannot be shared with species still in their violent developmental phase. She must be cleansed of this contamination." Zara stepped forward, her inner light flaring brighter. "Honored Arbiter, these humans are not violent by nature. They are protective. There is a difference. They bear weapons and scars of warfare. Their captain's face itself proclaims their savage nature." Morrison's hand moved to his scar, but this time not in shame. For the first time in years, he felt proud of the mark that had shaped so much of his life. "This scar represents sacrifice for others, Arbiter. It's a reminder that sometimes the right choice is also the dangerous choice." The High Arbiter's ancient eyes narrowed. "You would fight us to keep her? 5 primitive ships against the power of the collective?" "If necessary," Morrison replied without hesitation. "But I'd prefer to find another solution. You say Zara is contaminated by exposure to human chaos. What if that chaos is exactly what your people need?" Zara's eyes widened, as she understood what Morrison was suggesting. "Captain, you cannot mean—" "I mean exactly that." Morrison turned back to the view screen. "High Arbiter, your observer has learned something valuable about humanity. Maybe it's time humanity taught your people something in return." The alien's expression shifted subtly, ancient curiosity warring with ingrained protocol. "You propose an exchange of knowledge? Your species is barely capable of interstellar travel. Our species survived things that should have destroyed us 100 times over. We've turned every disadvantage into a strength, every failure into a lesson. If your people have become stagnant, maybe what you need isn't more observation. Maybe you need to remember how to take risks. The High Arbiter was silent for long moments, and Morrison could feel the weight of a decision that would reshape the relationship between two species. When the alien finally spoke, its voice carried a note of something that might have been respect. Your proposal is unprecedented, but perhaps that is precisely why it merits consideration. The test, the High Arbiter's terms, were simple and terrifying in their implications. Humanity would be tested, not in warfare or technology, but in the one area where they had always excelled, the willingness to sacrifice for others. The trial will be thus, the ancient being proclaimed from the view screen. Your species claims to value individual sacrifice for collective good. We will create a scenario where this principle will be tested to its absolute limits. Success will prove your worth as teachers. Failure will result in the cleansing of all human colonies and the quarantine of your home world. Morrison felt the blood drain from his face, but his voice remained steady. What kind of test? One of our judgment ships carries a quantum destabilizer capable of destroying this entire star system. We will activate it and give you exactly 1 hour to stop it. The catch, Captain Morrison, is that stopping it will require one individual to willingly sacrifice their life to manually override the device from within our ship. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Zara's luminescent skin had dimmed to barely a glow, her violet eyes wide with horror. Honored Arbiter, this test is beyond cruel. It forces them to choose between species survival and individual sacrifice. Precisely the point, contaminated one. Your observations suggest humans are unique in their willingness to make such choices. Let us see if your contamination has led to accurate conclusions. Morrison looked around his bridge crew, seeing the grim determination in every face. These people had followed him through impossible odds before, trusting his judgment even when it led them into danger. Now he was being asked to send one of them to certain death. There's another option, he said quietly, his hand moving once again to his scar. I'll go myself. Captain, no. First Officer Kane stepped forward. This is exactly what they're testing for. They want to see if humans will sacrifice their leaders for the group. They want to see if we'll sacrifice individuals for species. Survival, Morrison corrected. They never said it had to be a subordinate. Dr. Torres emerged from the medical bay where she'd been monitoring the conversation. Captain, there might be another way. Zara's physiology is remarkably adaptable. If she could somehow interface with their technology... Absolutely not, Morrison cut her off. I won't ask her to risk her life for our test. Zara moved closer, her inner light beginning to brighten again. Captain Morrison, what if the test isn't what we think it is? What if they're not testing human willingness to sacrifice, but human ability to find alternatives to sacrifice? Morrison turned to study her face, seeing something in her violet eyes that made his pulse quicken. Explain. My people have grown stagnant because we always choose the safe, predictable path. They expect you to make the obvious choice, send someone to die heroically. But what if the real test is whether you can find a way to save both the star system and the volunteer? Lieutenant Brooks looked up from her sensor station. Captain, I'm detecting massive energy buildup from the lead judgment ship. They're not bluffing about the destabilizer. Morrison made his decision with the speed that had kept him alive through countless dangerous situations. Dr. Torres, how quickly can you prepare Zara for an EVA suit modified for her physiology? Kane, I want you working with engineering to find any possible way to remote override that destabilizer. Brooks, full sensor sweep of their ships. Look for any weakness we can exploit. Captain? Zara placed a hand on his arm, and he felt a strange, tingling sensation where she touched him. There is something I have not told you about my people's technology. It responds to mental patterns as much as physical manipulation. My Connection to their systems might allow me to override the destabilizer without the traditional manual controls. Without the suicide component? Her smile was radiant, transforming her ethereal features into something that made Morrison's chest tighten. I believe so, but it will require something my people consider impossible. A mental link with a human consciousness to provide the chaotic creativity needed to bypass their safeguards. Morrison understood immediately. You're talking about linking with my mind. Your mind specifically, Captain. Your scar represents survival through adaptation, growth through adversity. Those mental patterns might be exactly what's needed to solve this puzzle in a way my people never anticipated. On the view screen, the High Arbiter's ancient features showed what might have been anticipation. You have 57 minutes remaining. Humans. Choose wisely. Morrison looked at Zara, seeing in her violet eyes a reflection of his own determination to find impossible solutions to impossible problems. All right then, let's show them what human creativity really looks like. The connection. The modified EVA suit felt strange against Zara's luminescent skin, but Dr. Torres had worked miracles in the 30 minutes she'd had to adapt human technology to alien physiology. As Morrison helped her check the seal connections, he found himself memorizing every detail of her face. The way her violet eyes reflected the shuttle bay lights, the delicate curve of her features, the silver luminescence that seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. The mental link, she said quietly as they prepared for the short journey to the judgment ship. It will be unlike anything either of us has experienced. I will see your memories, your fears, your deepest thoughts. You will see mine. Morrison's hand moved unconsciously to his scar. I'm not sure you want to see some of my memories. The battle where I got this scar. I made decisions that cost good people their lives. Zara's gloved hand covered his, and even through the suit material, he felt that strange tingling sensation. Captain, do you know what I see when I look at your scar? I see someone who was willing to put himself in danger to save others. Someone who learned from his mistakes and became a better leader because of them. Someone who carries the weight of those he couldn't save so he can save others in the future. The Arbiters think it makes me look savage. The Arbiters have forgotten that wisdom comes from surviving our failures, not from avoiding them entirely. Her violet eyes met his through their helmet visors. Your people call it being human. My people have forgotten how to be anything. The shuttle launch bay doors opened to reveal the stark beauty of deep space. The judgment ship loomed ahead of them, its impossible geometry shifting and flowing like liquid metal. Energy readings spiked across their instruments as the quantum destabilizer built toward critical activation. 37 minutes, Morrison reported, as their shuttle approached the alien vessel's docking bay. Are you ready for this? I am. Ready to try something my people would consider insane, Zara replied, and he could hear the smile in her voice. Is that human enough? The interior of the judgment ship was unlike anything Morrison had ever seen. Corridors flowed into chambers that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions, and surfaces pulsed with energy patterns that made his eyes water. Zara moved through it all with growing confidence, her luminescent skin brightening as they approached what appeared to be the ship's control center. Here, she said, stopping before a crystalline structure that towered 3 meters above them and pulsed with dangerous energies. The quantum destabilizer. It's already past the point where conventional shutdown would be possible. Morrison studied the device, seeing no controls, no interfaces, nothing that resembled human technology. How do we even begin to interact with that thing? We don't interact with it, Zara said, beginning to remove her helmet. We become part of it. The mental link will allow us to exist as a single consciousness within the ship's systems. Your creative chaos combined with my technical knowledge should be enough to convince the destabilizer to shut down safely. Should be. Her smile was radiant as she helped him remove his own helmet. The ship's atmosphere was breathable, carrying a scent like ozone and starlight. "Captain Morrison, has your species ever attempted anything with certainty of success?" He laughed despite the circumstances. "Not if we could help it. We prefer impossible odds." Zara moved closer, her hands framing his scarred face with infinite gentleness. "Then let us attempt something properly impossible." When her fingertips touched his skin, the universe exploded into sensation. Morrison felt his consciousness expand beyond the boundaries of his skull, merging with something vast and ancient and impossibly beautiful. Through Zara's mind, he experienced the loneliness of millennia spent observing other species from a distance, the desperate hunger for connection that had driven her to break her people's most sacred laws. And through his mind, she experienced the fierce joy of human determination, the willingness to charge headlong into danger for the simple reason that someone had to. She felt the weight of every decision he'd ever made, every life he'd saved, and every one he'd failed to save. She experienced the moment when plasma fire had carved his face open, and the years of shame and self-doubt that followed. But she also felt something else, the gradual realization that his scar had become not a mark of failure, but a symbol of growth. Every time he'd looked in a mirror and seen that twisted flesh, he'd been reminded that survival meant learning from mistakes, not avoiding them entirely. Together, their merged consciousness reached out to touch the quantum destabilizer's control systems. The device recoiled from their chaotic blend of human creativity and ethereal knowledge, its ordered patterns disrupted by thought processes it couldn't categorize or predict. Shutdown impossible. The device's artificial intelligence protested. Activation sequence irreversible. "Nothing is irreversible," Morrison's consciousness replied, his thoughts tinged with years of refusing to accept impossible odds. "We just have to find the right approach." "Every system has exceptions," Zara's mind added, her ancient knowledge of ethereal technology combining with human stubborn refusal to accept defeat. "Every rule has conditions where it doesn't apply." Together, they began to rewrite the destabilizer's basic programming, introducing variables and possibilities that its original creators had never imagined. They showed it human concepts like sacrifice leading to survival, failure leading to wisdom, chaos leading to growth. The device's protests grew weaker as its certainty crumbled. These parameters, unknown, illogical. "Logic is overrated," Morrison's thoughts carried the weight of every impossible victory his species had ever achieved. Sometimes the right answer is the one that shouldn't work. With 17 minutes remaining, the quantum destabilizer powered down, its dangerous energies dissipating into harmless background radiation. In the control chamber, Morrison and Zara slowly separated, their consciousness returning to individual boundaries, but forever changed by the connection they'd shared. "Captain Morrison," Zara whispered, her luminescent skin brighter than he'd ever seen it. "I understand now why my people have become stagnant. We seek perfection, but perfection means never growing, never changing, never becoming more than we already are." Morrison touched his scar, feeling for the first time in years truly proud of the mark that had shaped so much of his life. "And I understand something too. This scar isn't a reminder of my failure. It's a reminder that failure is just another word for haven't succeeded yet." On the Starfire's view screen, High Arbiter Vex's ancient features showed something that might have been wonder. "Remarkable. You have achieved the impossible, not through sacrifice, but through synthesis. Perhaps it is time for the collective to learn new patterns." As the judgment ships powered down their weapons and assumed peaceful formation around the Starfire, Morrison realized that this first contact would change both species forever. Humanity had found teachers among the stars, and the ethereal collective had rediscovered what they'd lost in their pursuit of perfection, the willingness to risk everything for the chance of becoming something greater. Zara's hand found his, her luminescent skin warm against his scarred palm. "Captain Morrison, I believe this is the beginning of something unprecedented." He smiled, his scarred face transformed by genuine happiness. "In my experience, unprecedented is just another word for interesting. I think both our species are in for quite an adventure." Outside the observation deck, the stars wheeled on in their eternal dance. But now they shone on two species who had learned that the greatest discoveries came not from perfect planning, but from the courage to reach beyond the boundaries of the known and touch the infinite possibilities that lay waiting among the stars.